Hey everyone, and welcome back to Never Be Alone. Yes, if you watched other episodes of this, it was Never Alone, but I figured, we always say never alone, but we really never want to be alone. So I renamed it to Never Be Alone. And this episode, I'm going to talk to a very good friend of mine that known since college. I mean, since high school. And her name's Melissa Poussin. And I know that's a difficult name to say, but it's okay. It's Louisiana, and you got this, okay? And she went through a tragedy in her life that changed her and changed the relationship which she has with her husband to a certain degree. Because it didn't bring them apart, but brought them together. So I'm gonna welcome my best friend, my good friend, Melissa. Well, Melissa, I just almost deleted you off of the stream. So, Melissa, before we get into it, um, just a quick recap. We were talking a little bit. We were talking about you and your husband, and I forgot to ask: did your dad get to walk you down the aisle? He did, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay. So I want to make sure. I want to make sure I remember that.
Yes.
So, y'all. So, if a quick recap before we get into the story, just tell us like your husband, and then we can get into the Bible verse and then your story. So, tell us a quick recap of how your husband. I know we just talked about this, but how your husband and you met. Because I keep emphasizing your husband. I know this is about what happened with your dad, but your husband plays a pivotal part in this story. Because I watched it unfold. So, just give us a little bit about that.
So we met 10 years ago in Sam's Club. We worked together and met and started dating a couple months after talking. And we got married 5 years later in 2015. So we just made 6 years, August 29th.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. 5 years. It took 5 years for him to build the courage, or 5 years for him to save up the money.
uh, well, Daddy wanted me to graduate college before I got married.
Oh,
And the
okay.
first couple years were a little rocky because Daddy was a little unsure. Everett needed to grow up a little and, kind of get saved, like really saved, not just act like he
Really?
was saved. So there
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
little
yeah.
hesitancy with Daddy. So he had to earn his way. But then, once he asked Daddy's permission, he was all for it. He loves Everett and he, was very happy.
That's awesome. And as a father of three little girls, I promise you, I'm going to be that exact same
Oh,
way.
yes. Daddy
Okay.
was very protective.
I promise you, that's not ever going to change. So,
Yeah.
before we get into everything, I always like to ask, what is your favorite Bible verse and why?
So my favorite Bible verse is 1 Corinthians 13. The love is patient, love is kind verse, because that is, I, as a young kid, my mom would always tell it to me, like, love is patient, Melissa, love is kind, because I had a little bit of a temper. So it's just kind of always followed me through life in every situation. It's kind of like, got to take a step back and remember, like, I need to be patient, I need to be kind, I need to be forgiving. So it's kind of just always been my go-to.
Okay. Hey, that's one of my go-to also. It's just like Lord, I need to be patient here, although it's
Mm-hmm.
not the easiest thing to
Yes.
do. So okay, the First Corinthians 13, and you only put 5 through 6 in there, but I would imagine it's the whole
It's
chapter. If you
the whole
really,
chapter. Yes.
if I say if you really boil it down to it, it's a whole chapter for
Yeah.
everyone. So with that being said, let's go into your story. What happened? What happened with your father?
So he was at work, and he was just come back from his lunch break, and he was walking back to his office, and he just collapsed and had a heart attack. And they tried to revive him back, and he worked for the state police, so there was a lot of troopers around. So like they first responders, so they really did everything they could. They worked on him for about 2 hours, and they just couldn't get him back. and that's what happened. We like to say, like in my family, like he saw heaven and was like, peace, I'm not coming back. So
Well, I like that. I peace. I'm not coming back.
well, because it's like they tried to revive him and they just couldn't get him back. And it was kind of like,
Yeah.
once you taste heaven, you're like, I'm not going back to that
I'm
earth.
not going. I don't want to go back. God,
Yeah.
Jesus, I see you. I'm not going back to that place down
Nope.
there. So, how well do you remember that day? I mean, I know I asked that because for a lot of people who go through something like that, where it's quick. You say your dad was he worked for the police department, and a lot of police fatalities are gunshot. You have enough time to go to your loved one and say your goodbyes, but for your instance, there wasn't any time. There was, you get a phone call that your dad had passed, and for a lot of people, our minds automatically put that into the forget category. You know what I mean? So how well do you remember that day?
I remember every detail. My mom called me at work and she said that your dad collapsed at work. We didn't know the extent. She said, meet us at the hospital. One of the troopers went and picked up my mom and brought her to the hospital. So we were all there. Every trooper that he worked with pretty much in his office was at the hospital with us. And the doctors, they tried everything they could at the hospital. And then the doctor came in and was like, wanting to explain what was going on to the family. So we just thought, okay, he had a heart attack. They might need to do surgery or something. And at least that's what I was praying for. And when he said, like, I'm sorry, there was nothing we could do, I don't know what he said after, because I just fell to the ground. I collapsed and I just started crying. And it was hard. And
Yeah.
So I remember every detail of that day, and I can still relive it, in vivid detail.
Yeah. And you're a daddy's girl.
Very
So
much.
I remember that. You were a daddy's girl. And for that to happen, it I the closest thing I have to something similar to that, because I've been blessed, I've been lucky, however you want to describe it, to not lose a mother or a father yet in my life. Is when my daughter, on last year's birthday, my mother calls me, and we're on the phone telling her happy birthday, and then she says my grandpa, who had been battling cancer and a lot of other things, she tells me your grandfather's unresponsive. And I was close to my grandfather. I haven't been in Louisiana in a while, but I was close to him. So I guess as close as I can get to that. And so I mean, you fell to the ground, and like your emotions at that moment was just, were you just torn? Like, did you believe it was happening? Did you didn't believe it was happening? Did you think of literally what everyone says? Did you think it was all just a dream?
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to wake up. He's going to say, oh, I'm just playing. Or like the doctor was going to be like, there's nothing we could do, but we have other solutions. Or I didn't think that it was actually happening. I was like, no, I'm going to wake up. It's all just a bad dream. Or daddy's just going to wake up. He's just going to get out of the bed and come see us. Like it didn't fully hit me that he was gone probably for a full year.
Wow.
Because it just was so shocking and traumatic, and my brain couldn't process fully that he was gone. Like
Right.
there's no more phone calls, there's no more anything. It took a long time for my brain to finally accept it almost.
How old were you when your father passed away?
26.
26. Right. So the reason why I do these interviews is to let people know that, you know, a lot of people go through tragedy and they think they're alone. And I want everyone to know that you'll never be alone when there's people in your lives and in the world that you go through, and there's God by your side. So in all this, did you ever doubt God? Did you ever start questioning your faith? Like, did you ever waver? Because you're a Christian, ever, you know, you're a solid Christian. You go to church every Sunday, you read your Bible. So did you ever question your faith? Like, God, do you exist?
Not so much that he exists, but I very much questioned it. And it was like more of, you don't love me because you took the most important person from me. I wasn't done learning from him. I wasn't done needing him in my life. You know, there's so much more things that I wanted to experience with my dad. And it was more of a anger. Like, I was very, very angry at God. And I was like, why should I love you when you clearly don't love me? That's how I was taking it. And I had to deal a lot with that anger. And to be honest, you know, I still have moments where I'm still like upset at God. I'm not so much angry and hurt, but it's still like you know, when I get to heaven, we need to have a serious talk, because I still don't understand. And I don't think you ever will understand why
Right.
he does things. And, you know, my whole family, you know, none of us were ready to be without him. It's like, we still need him now, even
Right.
after losing him, you know. And it's like, I still want to call him, and it's like, I still am not understanding. And that's, I think, the hardest part of just like knowing that there was a plan that God had. I was not a part of that plan. I'm just living into that plan in a sense.
Mhm.
So it was
Yeah.
hard.
I would imagine. And you said you're angry with God, and I thank you for being honest that you still have those troubles today. Because when you have those longings to call your father, is probably those times where you're like, God, why? That's the only thing I can think about. Is that's when you really like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
And like you said, when you get to heaven, you said when you get to heaven, you don't question God. But to be honest, when you get to heaven and you see your father, not just your heavenly father, but your earthly father standing there, you ain't gonna be asking any questions. Okay, Melissa,
True.
the questions gonna be the farthest thing from your mind.
Yeah, this is very true.
But I understand that, because that's what you want to do. And that's what anything in our lives, when something tragic happens, God, why? And especially something in your sense of
Yeah.
God, why? So you didn't ever doubt God. You got angry with him, which, all honesty, everyone gets angry with God. If you don't, then I guess you're a better Christian than us two who are on this on this video right now.
Yeah.
But how did you keep your faith though? Like, what made you? Because some people, when they get something like this and they get angry enough at God, they're like, "Peace, I'm out." You know, it's just like, I'm done with this. So how did you maintain your faith in all this?
It was hard. I mean, especially going to church, because my dad was a deacon in the church. You know, my mom was on staff. So everybody knew my dad. Everyone loved my dad. So it was hard for people in my church to lose him too, because they looked at him as such a pillar, you know. And so everyone was mourning him. And so it was very hard to continue to go to church and want to praise God, because I was on the praise team at that time, and it was so hard to sing of his goodness and his mercy and his love. And it's like, where's that for me? You know, you just took everything from me. And so I had to really push through because I knew that's what my dad would have done. I knew that's what my dad wanted me to do. And so I just had to keep thinking of him, and I wanted to honor his legacy, and I wanted to keep his memory alive, and I didn't want to tarnish that in any way. So that kind of was my pushing factor in it. And I sought help, you know, for like the first year. I was going to one of our pastors who was also one of my dad's best friends. So he knew him very well, and he's known me since high school. So he knows me and my personality, and he really helped me through it all. You know, he gave me books to read, and he would just pray with me, and he would let me be very vulnerable, and he would let me tell him how angry I was. And he didn't shun me, and he didn't make me feel like I was a horrible person because I was mad at God. You know, he was like, God's a big God. God can take the anger, but he also can take the anger from you and give you peace and give you more love to share. So if it wasn't for that and like seeking the help, I don't know if I'd be where I am right now, because it's been a very hard journey.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you if you sought help, and like you said, that's the thing that helps you. So, and at the beginning of this, I talked about your Everett, who's your husband. What role did he play? Like like I said, I know he played a major part in it because, well, he's living with you. Y'all have been married for how long when that happened? It wasn't very long, was it?
Not even a year and a half yet, like a year and 4 months. So
Okay.
it wasn't very long that we were married. So, but he, honestly, I wouldn't have been able to make it without Everett.
Right.
He's the one who made me get out of bed. He's the one who made me keep living. You know, he made sure I didn't just stop my life because I was in a horrible depression. And he loved me through it. He didn't chastise me or get angry with me when I was angry. You know, he just loved me through it. And he just made sure that I still did things. I still would go out to dinners with friends, you know, like if he knew that I was having a really hard time, he was secretly texting my friends and was like, Melissa needs y'all. Like, can y'all please come over? Or can y'all plan a girls' night for her or something? Like, she just needs something.
He was playing your life.
He really was. And he loved me through it all. And he was also going through, you know, pain because he loved my dad as a dad and he was a father figure to him. So he was also going through it. But, you know, I would not be where I am, and I would not be in a good place if it wasn't for Everett. If I was by myself, I would have let the depression take over. I would have probably just, I would have gone down the road of leaving the church altogether and probably just being a very sad and miserable person. Because my biggest fear growing up, if you ever asked me, it was never spiders or heights. It was always losing my dad. And my biggest fear came true. And I didn't know what life was without my dad. And Everett helped me create a new life, still missing a huge piece of my heart, but learning how to still move on and like enjoy life again.
That's awesome. Like that's phenomenal. It's I'm literally from a person who you said your dad didn't approve of because he needed to mature in his faith, to a person who literally kept you from losing your faith because of your father's laws. And I mean, to me, that was part of God's plan right there. It's just like, hey, I want to show you something that your dad may happen to your husband and was pivotal in your life. And so how have you, like, how many how many times have you shared this story? Like, do you have to, are you in a women's group or any, like, how do you use it to encourage people in your regular life? I mean, are you talking about it on a daily basis? I know it's probably not daily conversation, but how are you using it to encourage others in their walk?
Um, I was a part of a group last year, a small women's group, and it was called Freedom. And it was all about letting go of things and learning from the past and truly getting freedom. And so during that year-long ministry that I was part of, I really was able to share my heart and get things for me to be able to start talking about it and not completely breaking down every time I talk about daddy. That has really helped me. And unfortunately, one of my best friends lost her father last year. So me knowing what it was like and having my friends by my side, I was able to then do that for her, and I feel like I have such a soft spot for people now that I don't know if I necessarily would have before, or I wouldn't have understood what they were going through. I would have been like, okay, you've had a year, you need to stop mourning, whereas
Yeah.
I've had 4 and I'm still mourning, so it's like you kind of have more grace with people. And so
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, so you said that your pastor gave you books. Do you remember any of those books? And I know this is kind of probably putting you on the spot a little bit. And if you don't remember them, that's fine. But do you remember the name of those books that, that way we can give resources to people who, who could use them also? I mean, not everyone is brave enough to go seek help for those people. So do you remember, like, maybe one, even if not, it's fine.
it's one of them was called Chasing the Lion, Mark Batterson.
Okay.
And
He's a good author.
yes, so I did that one. And then I read what was Whisper. That was the other one.
Okay.
So those were the 2 books. Chasing the Lion was really about how to kind of find that spark again, how to find my purpose in life again, and how to be able to, like, move on and get that oomph, I guess, back in my life. And then Whisper was about just being able to hear God and listen and really be mindful,
Okay.
of taking out all the noise and the chaos and really, like, tuning into God. And he's a really good author, and
He is.
it's not one of these, like, philosophical type you would think Christian book. It was he really made me feel like I wasn't, I don't know, alone, or I wasn't, this horrible person. Like, he really just tried to help and encourage you throughout the whole book.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing those. So we can wrap this whole thing up, and if you were sitting next to someone who felt like they were alone because, like your friend who lost her father, and say I lost my father in something, tragic, and I felt alone. I mean, that's literally why I'm making and talking about these things. Is what would you tell me, or what would you tell someone that would be going through something like that?
When somebody is going through it, whether it's just happened or even a year later, you know, words are very meaningless sometimes. You know, people mean well when they're like, I love you, I'm always here for you. And it's like sometimes you don't always feel that. Sometimes just sitting with them and just letting them talk and just get it off of their chest does wonders for somebody.
Mm.
You know, you don't always have to have the perfect things to say, just being like, how are you today? Like, tell me how you feel right now. You know, and just letting them really be honest with you. That sometimes is the best thing that you can give them. It's not, you don't need this huge philosophical speech and be like, you're going to make it through. God's got this, because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, whatever. But really hearing me, really seeing me for where I'm at right now, and just loving that person. You know, you just have to show them grace and mercy and love, and just tell them like it is going to be okay. You will make it. You will always have this hole in your heart. It will never go away. It'll get better or it'll get easier to handle, but you still will have moments. And it's okay to miss that person. And it's okay to think of the things that you will never get or the things that they will miss out on. But then you have to think of the things that you had with that person. Think of the good memories and what they would want for you in your future.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I can relate to just being there. As a, you know, as a pastor, that's what they always tell you when you go to someone is you don't have to say a word. Just show up. Just be there for them. Just be a shoulder for someone to cry on. And that speaks way more words than words you could ever say yourself. So, well, Melissa, thank you for coming on, and thank you for being willing to openly share what's happened in your life and what's happened and encouraging other people. You know, I'll put the books in the description below. That way, other people who may be going through something like this can read it and hopefully be encouraged, and let them know that you never have to be alone. You have God and you have people in this world that have gone through the same thing you have. I hope this video has done that for you. Again, thank you, Melissa. And that's going to be our wrap for today.